All right. Hey guys, we are here to talk to you about LinkedIn. So I hope you're ready. How's it going, Jordan?
It's going good. I'm excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah. So for you guys out there who are not using LinkedIn, or you've sort of tiptoed in LinkedIn and you haven't really, gotten your profile set up, and you haven't, looked at some of the past tips that Jordan and I have given around LinkedIn, make sure you check those out. This video is going to be really important, but you need to have your LinkedIn foundation in place to really execute on some of the tips we're going to be giving you today.
Yeah, and I think
Awesome.
that's going to be a big part of it. Kind of going back to like what Brad just said, we have a foundational background, and we're going to touch on it a little bit with you guys today. But I want to say that going into this is something that is going to be kind of like the next step up. It's not, here's the basics, LinkedIn's important, here's how you would fill out like your profile, or here's how you would post. What we want to kind of get in today, some of those topics like Brad had just mentioned is, like what's the next step up? How do I market myself if I am already doing that on LinkedIn?
Yep. Awesome. So you can check out the video description. You're going to see content from Jordan's channel. You're going to see content from my channel. So go watch it all. Go watch either one. If you hate my stuff, then watch Jordan's stuff. So it's definitely all good. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. I know we've got some specific topics we want to talk about today, and make sure we're taking the audience to the next level with their LinkedIn profiles. So if you don't know, Jordan is the LinkedIn mastermind. So yeah, Jordan, what do we want to talk about?
Okay, so today what we want to talk about, we have 3 tips that I feel like are something that you wouldn't really just know getting into LinkedIn. So if you are at this phase that we're hoping that you're at, which is like, great, I have a LinkedIn. I know that's important by watching either one of your guys' content. That's something I want to do. I've set it up. I'm ready to go. Now what? And I feel like these tips have kind of come to me along the way of like trying to use LinkedIn. It hasn't been something that's like super intuitive of, oh, hey, I just signed up today and now I know these things, or I can Google these things real quick. These have just been things that I've noticed over, trying to consistently post on this platform for the last 5-6 months now. So what we want to talk about is one section that we're going to bring up to you guys is the volunteer experience, and why that's important to fill out, and why that plays into the SEO, why that's going to look good when you are looking for that job and looking to market yourself on LinkedIn as the platform. And then we want to kind of talk into that next part that I just mentioned. You've filled out your sections. You filled out everything that you have there on your volunteer experience. Now you want to kind of market yourself to find a specific job, or to find a job in general in your local area. And how can you do that? There's, I think, 2 tips there of trying to figure out who you represent, who you kind of want to fall in line with as far as their audience, and how you can figure that out. And then number 2 would be, great, I know that audience. Those are the people I want to target. How do I actually target these people? And we're going to go into some tips around that.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So what do you think's best? I know we talked about, we're going to do some volunteer stuff. We're going to talk about the importance of that. We're going to talk about basically this concept of finding role models, and then using those role models to find your audience, and then targeting your audience. So what do we want to jump into first?
Let's jump into our volunteer experience first. I think that's going to be a good transition into just like seaming everything up of, great, we got the profile ready, we're ready to go. Let's go into the actual action steps of this.
Okay, cool.
So I have my profile pulled up here, and what we're going to do with you guys, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see. Obviously, as we've talked about, you can check out Brad's content, my content. We've talked a lot about filling out your profile completely. And what that means is making sure you have like everything from just your picture, obviously, down to, your headline up here, to your schooling, to the current job you're at, to your about page, just everything on here. The more complete that you have your profile, the more favored LinkedIn makes you. The more keywords you also put out there for yourself to be found on this platform. So those are all really important things to know going into this part of it. But if you scroll down here, you have your volunteer experience, right? And volunteer experience, LinkedIn actually did a survey on this. This is something that they've been trying to actually promote a little bit more. I think we see this like in general, as far as like brands are aware. of like volunteer experience and like standing up for a cause, right? Like trying to actually get involved in our local communities. I think in 2020, we've seen a lot of that being a political year of just trying to make sure that we're putting our time and efforts into causes that we believe in and that affect our local communities around the world. So that's something they're also trying to push. And as far as this survey that they've taken, they've shown that I think it was like 89% of us on LinkedIn is what they said, have volunteer experience when asked. And only, I think it's 51% of us are actually not putting any volunteer experience. So just by the math side of that, right, is more than half of the people that have a LinkedIn profile are not putting the volunteer experience on there. And they actually went out and they asked people that were hiring and kind of got their take on volunteer experience. Because like I said, I feel like this gets a little slept on. And even myself from time to time, it's kind of just like, it could be there, you know, like it's not really something I'm super focused on. Maybe I might have some stuff, but yeah, like maybe I'm not too worried about filling it out. And they had actually gone to some of these people that are hiring, and they said 41% of those people that were hiring saw volunteer experience as equal to actual real-time job experience. And I think that reflects in different ways. You know, I feel like, yeah, it's great that you're volunteering. That's cool. But there's also different sides to that. I know for the company that I currently work for, and companies in the past as well, they actually give their employees X amount of time per year to be able to volunteer to these places that we have a stand on, right? They give us, I think it's like close to 20 hours or something like that a year that we can take off work. It doesn't count against your PTO. It doesn't count against anything. You just put in the time for it, get it signed off, and then you can go out and you can volunteer for whatever it is that you want to volunteer for. And I think that does a number of things, right? If we look at that as far as just like statistics go. And one, like, obviously we want to take a stand, and we just talked about the brand awareness and like having a stand in our local communities. And then two, there's obviously just like the good human nature part of it, which is volunteer experience is awesome in most cases, right? Like you're always trying to go and volunteer for these like good causes that are promoting great things around the world and in our local communities. And that's great. You're doing that. But I think the third side of it too, right, is as a hiring perspective, people want to be associated with people that have a stand on that. They also are getting like a sneak peek into who you are as a person. I would say, you know, the volunteer experience kind of speaks volumes about you. I know Brad is located in a different state than I am, but like here in Utah, this is like going to be on like everybody's pages. This is just like the religion that I go to, the church I go to. And it's pretty standard. Like here in Utah, there's a lot of people that pertain to the LDS faith, and they'll have this on here. But at one point, I wasn't living in Utah. I was living in Texas, and it was like it was pretty cool because like I said, I feel like this is pretty standard here where I live. But in Texas, nobody knew what this was. So it was like a good icebreaker, and for me to be able to kind of dive in and be like, no, like I actually took 2 years out of my life. Didn't go to school, didn't do anything else, just kind of went out, tried to talk about like the church that I go to, why that's important to me, did a lot of volunteer experience like in that realm of things of just service work. And it kind of talks a lot about like what we said of I had employers just like being pretty intrigued by it, and it's a good icebreaker to just be like, oh, this is this kind of person, right? Like he's willing to take 2 years out of his life dedicated to something he believes in and go and do this thing. So I think it's just all of those things combined is why I feel this is important.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think, it's huge for a number of reasons. I mean, I think number one, yeah, it's an icebreaker. It can help drive conversation. It can make you feel comfortable. It can make the interviewer or whoever you're networking with feel more comfortable. But there is an off chance, and maybe more than an off chance, that you volunteered with something that's meaningful to that person, or that's meaningful to that company, or, and you can actually establish a true connection through that volunteer experience. I mean, you can imagine a world where maybe you volunteered at an animal shelter, which seems so simple and it's so run of the mill. And of course, everybody has a local animal shelter, 90% of people. And can you imagine if you just happen to be interviewing with someone who was just an animal lover and they fostered animals and adopted animals and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, you immediately have a connection where even if, you don't interview as well as everyone else, or you don't have as much Salesforce experience as everyone else, you could potentially make a true connection to the point where somebody goes, you know what, like, I think we can mold them. And I wouldn't mind doing lunch break with that person because we can talk about our passion for animals. So I doubt that it's ever going to hurt you to have volunteer experience unless you volunteered with something so out in left field that maybe they were like, that could be questionable if he's volunteering with the, I'm not going to say anything. You can fill in the blank.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, I would think volunteering, either it's worst case scenario, the volunteer experience has no impact on their decision. Middle case scenario, it's a conversation starter and helps, break the ice. And best case scenario, you establish an actual connection with someone who favors you because of that experience. I don't see much of a lose doing this. And the fact that 50% of people have the experience and they're not listing it seems like an easy gap to fill to increase, even if it's marginally increase, your potential to connect with the right people and get yourself in front of the people you want to be in front of. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah. And I would just like to kind of touch on that last point you brought up. I think that's great, of just having this connection and what I had said earlier of kind of giving you this snapshot of who this person's going to be. Because just like Brad said, like, not only do they have this connection and that's cool to them and something to talk about and possibly do, something outside of work with you, that's awesome. But it also could, give them what they're wanting to find in a candidate. I feel like, in my experience, at least, as far as finding jobs and things, it's one thing to have the skill set and they care about that, obviously. But then I feel like when they're actually ready to hire, if they've had multiple people sign up to try to get that job, then they're kind of looking past that. They're looking past like, okay, great, he knows how to do the job, but what's it going to be like to work with? Who is this person? And to Brad's point, there is, if you have that chance that you've done something that they care about as well, as far as volunteer experience goes, I think that puts you into that category of like, okay, well, yeah, like the person that would take time to go and volunteer here or stands up for this cause, like that's somebody I want to know. That's somebody I think we want at the company. That's something I personally care about. And so that shows us a lot of like who this person is outside of work and probably how they carry themselves because they're taking the time to go and do something like this. So I think it shows a lot that way and puts you into that like extra category as well of this is like a type of person that we care to be around as well.
All right. Cool. Awesome.
So I think going into the next part, like we said, filling out all these sections, that's awesome. We wanted to talk about volunteer experience because that's kind of been hashed over again, I guess you could say, by LinkedIn. That's something they're really trying to push right now. And in general, brand awareness tries to push a lot of the volunteer experience. So now that you have your LinkedIn profile filled out, right? You have everything up here. You're ready to go. It's all ready to kind of be showcased to somebody. I think at this point, you're ready to go in for the ask. So the next part, like Brad had just kind of showcased this down here, is what we're going to do is we're going to kind of try to find a role model. And what we mean by role model is, for a good example, like me right now, if I wanted to start targeting the people that Brad talks to, Brad and I talk about a lot of similar things when it comes to Salesforce and finding jobs. And that's why we do these like collaborations, right, with LinkedIn. So me trying to figure out who his audience is probably a good idea for either one of us. Brad finding out who I talk to, me finding out who Brad talks to. And the question is kind of, how do you do that? And so if I look up Brad and I go to his profile over here, there's going to be this section. And I wanted to kind of talk about two things. One, anytime that a layout is changed or user experience is changed on a platform, it's going to be important if they move it to a space that's easier to find it. And that's exactly what LinkedIn has done here. There's this section here called People Also Viewed. And this, for just context purposes, this actually used to be clear down here at the bottom, like under interests. They had it clear down here, and then they would showcase like all these people that you also viewed. So it's like kind of an afterthought. It was just like, okay, like that's a cool little golden nugget to find, but you could tell it wasn't like top of mind for LinkedIn. They've now moved it, like I showed you guys, clear up to here. So you now have it pretty much right as you go into Brad's profile. I'm barely reading his name and I'm already seeing who is also viewing his content. So it's important at their standpoint, which also lets you know that it's going to be important for SEO, like being found on here. And they also want to showcase that to other people. I think as far as like a recruitment, job finding experience, like this is good to know if I wanted to hire Brad and, Brad doesn't work out. Okay, who else is kind of like Brad? These people. Maybe I need to go target them next for this job. But for in our purposes, right, like we're marketing ourselves. And so it's going to be important to realize like, hey, am I hitting that same audience? And if you're seeking a job, it's kind of that same idea where it's like, okay, I kind of want to be like this person. Maybe this guy has the job I want. He is a Salesforce admin. How do I kind of target those same people that are looking at his stuff? Because he's got a job doing exactly what I want to do. I want those same people looking at my profile now, so that I can get that same job. And you'll look at these people, right? And you can hit show more and it will show you all these people. So right now I'm not even showing up under Brad's stuff. So kind of like what we said, if I wanted that to change, that's going to kind of take us into the next tip. I'll kind of do a brief pause here, just so that we can kind of expand on this a little bit more in case Brad wants the same thing.
Yeah. So I think that's good. And so to the point, fundamentally, this is people who have also viewed my profile, right? Yeah. So when you look at this list, you're literally looking at a list of people who have some interest in what this profile is about, and they're checking it out, right? So someone like Mike Wheeler could be coming and just seeing like, hey, Brad's another person. He's another, person in this Salesforce sort of leadership space. Let me see what he's doing. For instance, and I don't want to put it on Mike Wheeler. Maybe it's me going to look at Mike Wheeler's profile, right? And you might see me show up on Mike Wheeler's profile because what am I doing over there? Well, I might be checking to see if there's a synergy, if there's something we could connect on. I might be checking to see if he is competing with my target audience, where I want to make sure that I'm staying up to date with my competition. It could be anything. So when you look at certain things, it's like, if I look at, David K. Liu or Mike Wheeler in that list, that tells me that this is probably a little bit of, a little bit of competition, a little bit of love, a little bit of checking each other out, seeing if there's a synergy. You're just sizing each other up. That's what that's all about. But when you're looking at this from a different perspective, say you're looking for a job or you're just open to work and you see somebody post and they say, can't believe it, landed my first Salesforce job today. I couldn't have done it without blah, blah, blah. You've seen those posts.
Yes.
This is an actionable tip. Click on that person's profile and see who has been viewing their profile, because guess what? They got in front of the audience that you want to be in front of. Right. So something about their profile, and maybe you look at their profile and you say, hey, is there anything they're doing that makes them stand out that I'm not doing, that looks slick, looks good, looks like they're showcasing their value more readily. But further than that, it's, hey, what is it about this people also viewed section, or these people, like for instance, right at the top there, you see Deepika, and it's Salesforce developer at Google. This person is likely coming over here. If you saw this on someone else's profile, it's likely because they're hiring for a Salesforce person. And maybe they're trying to pull someone in at Google, and maybe this profile drew the attention of some of these other companies. So be aware of that. And if you're seeing people landing jobs, then go give their profile a quick overview and see who they're looking at and who their audience is. And those might be the same people you want to be in front of too. And that's just a quick use case. It could be anything. Like Jordan said, it could be that there's someone you want to not necessarily imitate, but someone you want to get in the same audience as, right? Like Jordan's not checking out my profile because he wants to do the exact same thing I'm doing. He's checking it out because he thinks there might be a synergy of that, my audience being interested in things that he talks about. And that's just a synergy. It's not competition.
Yeah. I love that.
I think it's huge. And I think if you're not doing this, you would be remiss. I can tell you sort of insider info that I have used this exact same situation. And I learned it from Jordan, of going to people who also viewed, and then doing another tip that Jordan's going to talk about in a little bit, I'll bet, is like checking out what these people are posting and who's liking and commenting and all this kind of stuff. And I've quite literally gotten sales of my courses by going through, connecting with these people, and not even sending a message. I just connect with them and they go, who is this guy who just connected with me? They check out my profile. They like what they see. They buy a course. It's perfect, right? So this really works. If you think it doesn't really work, and this is like going to be one of these tiny little things that doesn't really make a difference, then you might want to think again, because we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't important.
Yeah. And I love that. I love what Brad just talked about in the sense of this little section over here. It really can evolve to be whatever it is that you're trying to currently do. So I like how Brad called that out. It doesn't always have to be this competition. Like, I'm looking at Brad's stuff all the time, and I'm not trying to compete with Brad in really anything that I do. It's he's talking about things that I know are going to play into other things I'm talking about that he's not, right? So if I'm doing more deep dives on LinkedIn, well, he's talking about how to land your first job. Those things go hand in hand. So it doesn't always have to be this competition. I like how he called that out. I also like how he called it out where this really can fit the narrative of whatever you want it to be, you know? So this has evolved for me. I know in my own experience, it's been when I first got on LinkedIn to, so-and-so in Utah at this, specific city that I live in is doing this, and he has this job, and I want a job like that. So I want, Joe Schmo's stuff or his audience to be also looking at my profile as well. And it started out like that of just, I want to find a job similar to him. How do I get the same people looking at my stuff? Like, what do I need to do that? And it's evolved into this thing where I'm now, posting Salesforce tips and doing these other things like that to now be like, okay, great. Like, I have these jobs I want, but now, I want to kind of post content. I want to be able to have more people be attracted to my YouTube channel and things like that. Okay, who else is doing something like that? And who can I kind of target for those purposes? So it is pretty cool, because this isn't just like a one-time trick of like, hey, I need a job and I got to look at this and utilize it. It really turns into like, you should really be able to utilize this the entire time that you're here on LinkedIn to just get a pulse check on like whose audience is looking at you.
Yeah. And I'll just, I know we're sort of starting to beat the horse a little bit, but I do want to point out that, I'm in the freelance space, or, I have been for the last 5 years of freelance consulting with Salesforce. And I coach a lot of people to freelance consult with Salesforce. And this is huge for me. It's huge for them. What you can do is you can go to large Salesforce consulting firms or mid-sized Salesforce consulting firms. Those are our quote unquote competition. Now, we're not going to steal deals from them. They might take our people, right? But if you're looking for a new client as a freelancer and you come in here and you go look at who's been viewing, I'm going to pick on somebody like Rackspace. Rackspace is a pretty well-known mid-sized consulting firm, probably leaning on the large size now. And when you look at the type of people who are looking at mid-sized consulting firms to do their consulting work, and you're a freelancer, meaning you are going to charge them less money for allegedly the same expertise, and you can come in and you can say, who's looking at this consulting firm? Who's been clicking on this consulting firm's LinkedIn profile or this consulting firm's business profile on LinkedIn? Who's looking at this? Because chances are those are the people that I want to come look directly at me and find out that I'm doing the same thing this consulting firm's doing for a fraction of the cost, and they should connect with me. So there are 100 different ways you can spin this, and it's not just Salesforce. It's just professional, using a professional social media site in general. That's what it's all about. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that kind of leads us into, our third tip here for the day, which is, okay, cool. You guys have let me know about volunteer experience, filling out my profile, making sure that's good to go. All right. You've given me the action tip of like, I want to find an audience and all that. And I think the last part of it is, it kind of turns into this, what's the actionable step from here? Like, how do I actually reach out to somebody and market myself, or go in for the ask? Is part of that. And Brad mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I want to show you guys a way that you can figure out who is liking people's content. I mean, this shouldn't be a mystery, but I found through my own experience that people really do think it is a mystery, because typically I want to say like 99% of the people are cool with it. Like they find it in a way where it's like, oh, that's pretty sweet. Like you dug a little bit deeper. You realize that I like Brad's content. And then you reached out to me with an ask of, look at my YouTube channel or check out my profile, or, hey, I post similar tips if you want to connect. And I'll typically send something out like that. I'll find somebody I want to kind of grab their audience with. It's not really like, you're obviously not really stealing anything. It's just, hey, they look at this person's content. I post something similar. Yep. I could probably add some value to your day as well. And that's kind of what you're asking. And I would say, like I said, 99% of people are usually cool with it, but every once in a while you get some like one-off message and they're just flabbergasted of how you figured out that they look at Brad's content or that they try to look at the similar like audience or same people that you're looking at. And really all you're doing, like we said, here's the actionable tip. Cool. I want to target Brad. Okay. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to scroll down. There's a section here called activity. And this lets me know everything that Brad has been commenting on. So this is why it gets funny to me when people are like thinking I'm hacking them or something, because it's like, dude, it's like right in front of your face that you can see this. So activity wise, I'm seeing everything he's commenting on and what he's doing. And there's a button here that says CL. I can click CL and I can actually start to filter this out a little bit. So I can look at all activity, which is going to be like his comments, his likes, his posts, all combined into one thing, articles and documents if he does that stuff. But for me, that's not usually like the way to go about it. Like I could definitely do that. If that's you and you're just kind of interested of like going further down that rabbit hole of what we talked about of, okay, these are the people looking at Brad's content. Who is Brad now commenting on? Like, who's Brad worried about? I could do that. I could scroll down here and be like, oh, okay, he liked this. All right, who is this person? Like what could I look at? Here's someone that commented on his post. Should I click on his? Like you could go down that rabbit hole. That's one way to do it. But the way that I typically do it, I'll go to his posts. And in my specific scenario and use case is going to be, I am posting Salesforce content. So for me, it's like, what does this person post? Let me get an idea for like what they're trying to put out there in the world. And if that's similar to me, then cool, I want their audience. And so he'll put out this post, right? Okay, great. 23 people have liked this. That's awesome. I can click on this. I can now see everybody that just liked it. It's as easy as that. And I'm sure Brad will get into this and we can like spin this for like looking for a job and things. Yeah. Going down this rabbit hole real quick is, okay, great. I want to target these people now because Brad posts a lot of stuff that I post, or he posts a lot of things that go in hand with mine. All right, so now who can I start to target? Am I already connected with them? And this probably isn't going to be the greatest example because I just randomly clicked it and we do have a lot of common connections. Yeah. And I know I'm connected with Giddy, but what I would do is... That's because I've been connecting with all your people, Jordan. It's not the other way around. So what I would do is like, I'm on a Mac, so I hit Command and I click, and that's going to open it up in a new tab. Okay, that's doing two things for you. One, it's calling attention to your profile because regardless of whatever I do from now on, Giddy just saw that I viewed his profile. Chances are, I know most people, that's going to make you curious to be like, who's this person? Why is he looking at my profile? And they usually look at yours back. Yep. So one, it's going to call attention because it's going to give him a notification and say, Jordan just viewed your profile. So now he's going to know that I viewed his profile. So that's great. But on top of that, okay, great. He has his stuff here. I'm obviously connected with him. But let's say you take Brad's example. You've been connected with Giddy. You've been commenting on his stuff. You've been liking his stuff. You're now ready to ask him to go in and buy a course that Brad advertises. Okay, cool. I can hit my message. I can send him a message and go from there, right? And I could send him this message that whatever I want to say and go in for my ask. But it is kind of cool because I don't know if I'll be able to find one on this example, but you might be able to scroll down and see some second. You see that I think for people who don't use it a lot, and maybe not, so you can see like if for people who don't use LinkedIn a lot or you're not familiar with how it works, you see that little first beside somebody's name. That means you're already connected with them. It means you're a true connection. Now, when you see that second, it means that you are connected with someone that is connected with them. So it means there's a mutual, it's sort of like in Facebook, if you use Facebook, it's like we have a mutual friend. So it's that. So it's like you're a second level connection. So those are the people, right? And I do this. I use this exact same strategy. I'm not saying I use it as often as I should, but when I have free time and I'm on LinkedIn, I might go to one of Jordan's posts and say,
dude, Jordan just got like 100 likes on this thing. Let me see who these people are. And I can scroll down and it orders them. So all the people who I'm already connected with show at the top, scroll down to the bottom. And in Jordan's case, you might say, you know what, if the other 20 people I'm already connected with, chances are these bottom 3 are people I should also be connected with. Let me grab them real quick. And at the very least, send a connection request. And that's how you move through that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good call out, because that's exactly where I was going with, Raphael here. Like, I'm not connected with him. I don't know who he is. I haven't looked at his profile before, but now, great. Like you guys all just saw there's 23 people that liked this, and 3 of them I'm not connected with. So that means the majority of the people that looked at this are things that they're also hopefully looking at my content, or I'm connected with. It's similar stuff. These 3 people are probably great candidates to connect with, and kind of go forward with that. I wanted to add on, if you get into that content creation stage of it, if that is you listening to this, Brad pointed out it's great to know that they're second, and that means that you're not connected with them. But it also actually goes a level deeper as well. So I've had some where, I am specifically trying to target people almost on a daily basis of trying to find these audiences. And sometimes people are less active on LinkedIn, so I'll get someone that likes something and they take a while to accept my connection, or maybe they don't want to for whatever reason. It will actually layer it a level deeper. So you'll start getting into these second connections appear. And if I send, Raphael a connection right now and he doesn't accept it till next month, and I come back to this post and I'm like, oh, hey, it still says I'm not connected with Raphael. Chances are I may not remember that I tried to connect with him. I'll go in there again, and it actually sorts it by pending first.
Nice.
So all the people that are actually pending will be first. So you can kind of play that quick game of like, who is still pending on here, and kind of scrolling down until you get the people that are no longer the pending stages. And then it will move into that, they're no longer pending, these people you haven't even sent a connection invite to.
Yeah.
So I think it's really actionable. And I think from that point forward, right, like something I would legitimately do is I would come in here and I'd add a note and I'd be like, hey, Raphael, and I could type this out and just say something like, I noticed that you looked at Brad's content. He talks a lot about this. I talk a lot about these same tips. Wanted to send a connection invite. Check out my YouTube, for more details on that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Chances are when you send something like that, kind of like what Brad, I'm sure, is going to get into, is you're no longer this like just random off cold connection. It becomes this thing of like, oh, that's kind of cool. This guy did some research on me, found that I like Brad's stuff, thought that I could benefit from his stuff too because it's similar, and then sent me an invite with a note on it. And here's some information about this guy. Like, for me, that's just kind of like this no-brainer of like, why not connect? Like, this person's interested in connecting with me. They're going to add value to my day. Sure, why not, right? It's no longer this hopeful and wishful thinking around it.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. And you go, so going back to the process, and obviously you can rewind the video or whatever, but going through this process, it's effectively find people that you feel that you might want to imitate what they're doing, or maybe they're a role model, or maybe they're a competitor, or whatever it is. It depends on what you're doing. And you go out, you look at them, you see what they're posting, and then you see who it is that's engaging with them on those posts. Like, if people are commenting, those are probably even better people to connect with. If they're just liking a video, those are probably, good people to connect with. But if you're in a space where there's a lot of people, somebody might get 1,000 likes. Yeah. And just be, it's like, you're probably not going to run into this, but just be aware that if you're connecting with like 100 people a day and they're not saying yes to your connection, it's kind of tell LinkedIn that you might be spamming a little bit. So just be careful of that. I've heard people give recommendations of, don't send more than, 20 new connection requests a day and stuff like that. I don't have any specific advice. I've never seen an issue with that, but I'm sure it happens. The other thing is there's a limit to the number of connection requests you can have pending at any given time. There is a way to clean it up. Like if somebody hasn't responded to you, you can go, it's been more than a week, they haven't responded, then you can go clear out those connection requests. But just be aware, and you'll trip and fall into those things on your own. But the last thing you want to do is get blocked by LinkedIn once you've established, a brand. So, probably limit yourself to maybe connecting with 20, 30 new people a day. and don't do 100 a day,
Yeah.
even if they are saying, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Actually, I do have an experience on both of those. So I can kind of talk to that specifically, which is when I first started, I did exactly what Brad's saying. I didn't do it this way into where it wasn't really a personal connection I was trying to make or like research on them. I literally just started going to like, if you click on my network, it will let you know like, hey, here's some other people like that you could possibly connect with, that you have mutual connections with. And I was like, yeah, forget doing this thing where I have to look at everybody's and actually make like effort into this. Let me just start adding people. And I started adding people. And what I found from my own research, what Brad has said, is as people choose not to connect with you, if you've done this, you'll know, but you can actually say, no, I don't want to connect. And then it will give you a prompt and it will say, why don't you want to connect? And if you start hitting, I don't know this person or whatever, that sends that signal back to LinkedIn that Brad had talked about. And this actually happened to me, unfortunately. Like I went through this phase where I was doing that. I thought that was going to be the easy way when I first got into LinkedIn. And I actually got blocked for 4 days. I couldn't do anything for 4 days on LinkedIn. And so it doesn't actually give you a time either, which is really frustrating. And I think like a good wake up call, because it actually just says, hey, you sent out too many connections. People didn't know who you were. We're trying to limit things for spamming purposes, like Brad said. Check back and see if you have access. Essentially, didn't give you a timeline on anything. And so for 4 days, I was literally like, okay, how long is this going to go? This is like horrible. I got myself in this situation where, you know, I'm now probably this flagged account that looks like I'm spamming people. And on top of that, I'm now blocked for who knows how long it is. So that's a good call out.
Yeah, it's a big deal. That's good to know, to sort of have that insider info that, you know, maybe it's not the end of the world if it does happen to you, but just try not to let that happen. You don't want to have 1,000 connections and then lose your account. All right. So yeah, so you're moving through, you're connecting with people, you're going into this, you're finding these people you want to imitate, you're checking out their posts, you're seeing who likes and comments, you're connecting with those people, and trying to make them part of your audience or part of your network and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And to Jordan's point, you know, you can send personalized connections, right? If these are people that you obviously can tell what the interest is, why not connect with them? Now, I'm a little softer in my approach. I don't necessarily want people to buy my programs or buy my courses who aren't self-starters. I'll put it that way. I see more success out of people who are really ready. So I don't try to sell to people to make them be ready. I want them to be ready and then come to me. And that's just my approach. So I consider it, you know, to myself, sort of a very soft sell. And all I'm doing is I'm coming in and I'm saying, hey, I'll connect with you. And if you see, I mean, because you can see when I connect with you, you can see my title, at least the first little bit of it. And it says pivot into a career as a Salesforce professional making $60K in 6 months or less. If you see that and you don't accept my connection request, then I probably don't need you in my audience. If you see that and you connect with me, but you don't go check out my profile and engage with me, you're probably just not ready yet. And that's okay. Not everybody has to be ready, right? Yeah. But I want my audience to be not just huge, but I want it to be fine-tuned, right? It's the quality and quantity situation. So in some cases, you may just want to have 10,000 connections because it beefs up your profile and it adds credibility to your LinkedIn profile. In my case, I'm happy with the number of connections I have. Now I want quality connections of people who might actually be interested in my content. And I would rather just hone in on those people. So it's all about where you are, but think about what you're trying to develop here. Now, these are tactics and strategies that we're teaching you, but you have to understand what your vision is and what your goal is, and then make sure you're being thoughtful about who you're connecting with, what type of messaging you're sending. I would not advise connecting with someone fresh and sending them a note to, do you have any jobs available? Do you know anybody who has a job available? Can you look at my resume and tell me what you think about it? Can you? Starting a relationship by asking for favors is not usually a successful strategy. Starting a relationship by trying to just show positivity or have a positive influence on someone
Yes.
is usually a much better way to start a relationship. And then maybe 6 months from now, or a month from now, or 3 months from now, once you've shown that you're in this for the relationship and you might need a favor later, that's perfectly fine. But coming out of the gates, saying, hey, help me, help me, help me, it's usually not a good recipe for, number one, getting any help, or number two, establishing a long-term network.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you called that out, because I almost skipped over this part. I wanted to touch on that when we were talking, because that's exactly right. Like, as Brad's saying, I'm going to go back to something I've heard since, so it doesn't sound like I'm ripping this off, but like, I listened to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk. I've talked with Brad about that. There's a book that he wrote and something he talks about as far as this strategy is concerned called jab, 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 right hook. And basically it's essentially that same idea. Like, I even have people do it for me, right? Like, I connect with someone and I toss it out there because I do mean it, but I also kind of have like an expectation for people. I'll connect with someone, they connect with me, I reach back out, hey, thanks for connecting, thanks for, if they checked out my YouTube, thanks for checking out YouTube, whatever it is, let me know if I can help you out in any way. And I mean that, but then when it's like this automatic, like they literally just connected with me, haven't done anything, they didn't even look at YouTube even though I asked them to, and they're like, hey, you got any jobs? Then it's like, who are you? Like, who am I to spend time helping you? I don't even know who you are. We haven't even established a relationship. Yeah, we're connected, but what does that really mean to me? So going back to this jab, 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 right hook idea that Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about, which is like what Brad said, you connect with someone, or in general in a relationship, what you're going to do for all those jabs is what he's talking about, is giving. So it's a give, 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 give. And after you've given so much value to that person, and in my case and in Brad's case, those things could be different, but let's take Brad's example of, he's trying to soft sell, you connect with him. Okay, great. You've been, asking him tons of, or you've been liking all of his content. You've been sharing his stuff. You've been liking it. You've been commenting on it. Everything that you can possibly do that is like promoting Brad's stuff basically for free for him. And maybe you're not ready to buy that course. I'm not putting this on Brad to say this is what he would do, but in that case, right? Like, you go in and you're a little hesitant, because we've actually had some people between Brad and I that have reached out to me, that have wanted to buy Brad's course, but have some questions about it. And I just loop them into that, group chat. Cause it's like, hey, like, you've been liking his stuff. You've obviously been paying attention. You've been doing things for Brad to promote him. Chances are he's willing to answer a question around his own course so that you feel comfortable taking it, Yeah. And so I think it just finally gives you that right hook, and the right hook portion of it is the ask, right? Which is like, hey, I've been giving you value this whole time for a long time now. I've established a relationship. I've done all these things for free for you. Now it should be a more comfortable state for you to realize, like, hey, I've been supporting you. I got this quick question. Like, I'm looking for a job. I see you talk about a lot of jobs on here. How could I go about doing something like that? And go and ask.
Yep. That's exactly right. If you, and I'll tell you this, I try to respond to everyone who messages me on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. I consider it part of what I've signed up for by putting my face out there. Now, if you come, but I will say, if I get a comment and you just reached out to me on LinkedIn, and the first thing you say is, hey, Brad, I'm looking for a job. Can you tell me how to find a job? And by the way, while you're at it, look at my resume and tell me any updates I need to make to my resume. And I'm like, So I've got a job. I've got a freelance consulting company. I operate my programs. I've got a lot going on. I don't necessarily have, 20 minutes to specifically review you. Now, if you come to me and you start by saying, hey, Brad, checked out your YouTube videos. Appreciate everything you're doing for the Ohana. Really good content. I especially liked your video on this and that. It hit home for me. Appreciate what you're doing. Thanks. And that's it. And you exit. And chances are I'm going to respond to you within 24 hours and say, thanks for checking out my content. I really appreciate it. Happy to have you as part of, my network here on LinkedIn. And then if you come back to me later, I'm going to be more likely to look up in that message thread and go, all right, okay, I'll help you out. Let's see what happened. And it's the same thing. I would argue that it's the same thing Jordan and I are doing trying to do it from a platform, right? What we're doing is we're coming here and we're saying, or for me, I'll speak for myself. What I'm doing is I'm going to give free advice, free information through videos like this and other videos on YouTube. I'm going to go on LinkedIn and make posts. I'm going to respond to people who have questions in the Salesforce for Everyone Facebook group, and I'm going to do my best to answer their questions and help them where they are. And then when the day comes that they're ready to take this to the next level, I'm hoping that they'll trust me that my course or my program is the right thing for them, because they realize I'm coming from a good intention. I'm coming from a place of a good intention. And it's not that every YouTube video says, hey guys, did you know that LinkedIn could help you land your first job? Oh yeah. You want to know more? Check out the link below and buy my stuff, because I'm not telling you anything for free. So it's a much, like you said, maybe it's a jab, 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 right hook, right? And the jab, jab, jab is, here's some really amazing free advice that you can take action on for your LinkedIn profile, for your first Salesforce job, to get volunteer experience, to get your certifications. And then the right hook is, like I said, I'm softer. So it's the right hook is, maybe you'll come back around having built trust with me and understanding that hopefully I'm the person that you would like to learn from and trust, and you'll check out one of my courses. So that's really, it's the same approach. You're just coming at it from the consumer or the individual perspective, where we're trying to do it to, 100 or 1,000 people at a time.
Right. Yeah. And I love that. And I want to kind of stress that for like everybody listening, which is, just, I guess, keep that in mind. Like what Brad and I are saying is like, keep in mind, like who you're trying to go in for this ask for. And this changes, and it's not to say anybody's above anything. But think about it. I've been burned on these for just doing the exact same thing. Like thinking I'm on the same level as some dude at Google when I have no Salesforce experience and I'm going in for an ask for a job there. It's like, chances are this person's at Google. He's a recruiter. They have their pick of the litter. I'm going to assume that it already is.
I would assume. Yeah.
And who am I? Like, I don't have the credentials. I've never provided value to this recruiter. We don't have any connections. And my first connection standpoint is like, hey, connect with me. I want a job here at Google. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's just not gonna work. Like, you got to think about people and their time and like what they're doing. And it almost comes off, and I know people don't mean it this way, but kind of being in this position a little bit myself now, is it almost does come off of like this, almost like not really respecting my time, because it's like what Brad said. Think about Brad's life, right? He's selling all these courses. He has to make the courses. He runs a freelance company. And then on top of that, he's doing all this stuff for free for everybody in Salesforce, of posting, doing interviews like we're talking about. And all that is on his own dime and on his own time to do all this. So when you're reaching out to Brad or myself, right, where we're doing all this stuff for free already, and it's like, well, look at all the value we're providing you for free. And then the first thing you want to do is like get something out of me more. It's like, hey, do you not realize that like I have a YouTube channel dedicated to this? Or do you not realize that like I talk with a lot of people every single day? Like, I'm trying to do all this for you. Yeah, I want to help every single person. Right. But like, we're also people at the end of the day. Sometimes like this social media stuff turns stuff into numbers and just an end screen for you, because that's what it really can be, right? Like, we clicked on Raphael's profile. I don't know him personally, so to me, that's just like it almost comes like this character, right? This character and like game playing, versus being like, no, Raphael was like a real person we just clicked on. Brad's a real person. I'm a real person. We also do stuff outside of Salesforce, believe it or not. We both have lives and families, and we're doing the same stuff as you, So all that considered is just like something that I feel like everybody should make sure that they're considering when you go in for that ask. Speak to the audience you're talking to. Yeah.
I think that's spot on. I know I say that a lot. That should be my tagline. That's spot on. It's just being intelligent, and I think about the way you're communicating with people. And I think try to picture that you're in the real world, and you really are in like maybe a big conference center. Yeah. And there's a bunch of people around, and you have the ability to go network and connect with these people. And the nice thing is you can do a little research about them before you walk up and shake their hand. Yep. But you would never in the real world, and treat this like the real world, because guess what? LinkedIn is the real world. Like, This is part of networking through technology. And treat it like you're walking up to somebody at a business conference, and you would never walk up with your resume to somebody and say, Brad, I appreciate everything you're doing for this community. And here is my resume, and I'd like for you to review it. And here's a red pen so you can make edits. And then also, I'm looking for a job. So if you could just go ahead and take my hand and come introduce me to everybody else you know who might be hiring. You would never do that, ever. Right. That would be so just socially unacceptable, right? So make sure you keep those social norms online, okay? Because it's so easy to copy paste something that you've said to everybody else, but you would never do that in the real world, in real life. You would never walk up to people who you truly believe are helping you, and they've already done so much for you. You would say, thank you. You wouldn't say, hey, I need you to help me personally, and I expect you to do this. So just be aware of that, and be aware of other people and their lives. I could go into this for hours about this. The same thing with job hunting. Yeah. People may not respond to you asking them about a job opening that they have tomorrow. They may not respond next week because they have family, they have parents that they might be caring for, they have children that they're probably caring for, they have 40 to 50 hour a week jobs that they're taking care of. Maybe their car broke down and they need to get it in the shop. People have lives. There's stuff going on in their lives that you're not aware of, and just keep that in mind. Don't always assume that people are ignoring you. Persistence is a very good attribute to have, but make sure you layer that with a healthy dose of being sort of understanding of people's personal lives. And there's a lot going on there. So yeah.
I love that. And I love ending it on that note of like, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, people that are going in for these like ludicrous asks like on LinkedIn and, you know, trying to find a job right off the bat. But the flip side of the coin is exactly that. I saw a post by another person on LinkedIn I follow, and he talks a lot about that same idea. He's a bigger influencer on LinkedIn, but he talks a lot about like the idea of when you DM people, and to Brad's point, it's not always going to be this negative thing. I know we talked about some negative things of like, don't do this, don't do that. But I think the other side of it is really, if you do follow the things that we've kind of talked about today of you are adding value, you're helping them, they're aware that you're helping them. Chances are most of us, we want the continued help and we like the support. So we're not purposely trying to turn you down. And I feel bad if anybody is like that on my list as well, because I know there's probably some, because some people will message you once and it's like, okay, I'm getting X amount of messages per day because I'm trying to post so often. And I may just not see it. I may just like have said I would help you, or I read it and I was like, hey, yeah, I'm willing to help him out. But then I'm also working a job, like Brad said, like, especially this week, we got a holiday coming up. It's like, there's other things in life going on, and chances are I really could forget. So part of this other guy's advice that he gives you is, to Brad's point, like persistence, and just like actually taking the note that if you did those steps that we talked about today, try taking it the other way. Don't assume that they're ignoring, like Brad said, but also just like assume the other side of like, they're probably busy. They're doing all this stuff for free and they have a life. So they're probably busy. Let me reach out again and just follow back up, you know? And if you do that 2 or 3 times, chances are, you know, we're going to see it. We're going to be like, oh, and it's going to make, I know for me, it makes me feel guilty where it's like, oh, geez, I actually told them I would help them, or I read it. And I was willing to help and I know they helped me. And now I feel like I'm being the rude one here because like I do want to help you and I didn't, you know?
Yeah. No, I've definitely been in that situation multiple times. And I'll say the other thing too is that, and I know we're sort of ranting here, so I think you guys got the most value out of the video, but if you're still listening, thank you. So I'll say the other thing is keep in mind that, that a lot of what it takes to be, and again, we've signed up for this. We're sort of putting ourselves out there, and we've signed up for all of this. So it's no excuses, but I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm working on the program, I'll work on it until 1 a.m. in the morning, and then I'll get up at 6 a.m. and I'll ping Jordan and we'll shoot a video to talk about stuff that we want to add value to the community. And I can tell you that sometimes we get tired, and sometimes you might catch us on a tired day because we're people. So if you get sort of a short response, or you get sort of a, hey, did you even do this, this, and this, or look at this video first? Like,
yeah,
I promise we're actually nice people. We're not just faking it on YouTube. But you could catch us on a sleepy day. So take us with a grain of salt. So if you're watching this and you're like, hey, Brad messaged me back the other day and he was sort of short with me, message me again. I got good sleep last night and I might be able to help you a little more.
Yeah. I mean, exactly what Brad's saying. I mean, there's just stuff that happens in life that not everyone's going to be aware of, that you don't need to be aware of. But
That's
yeah,
right.
there is stuff like that. And we are trying to put on our A game every single time. But there are times I can think of where, I'll get a message that I don't love, where it's like somebody actually coming at me for connecting with them, or something that they're trashing on, like a YouTube video that I thought was good, or they're coming from left field. And then if I read a message that seems like a similar to me, and maybe it's not, maybe they're literally just like trying to be genuine with me and give me feedback. I can automatically, I'm already triggered, and then I probably should stop reading my messages.
That's right. That's right.
And then I read that and I'm like, okay, like I'll do exactly what Brad said. I kind of get short with it. So yeah, I mean, there's all things to consider there. And I think just driving this back home off of our rant here is just, if you guys are really following like what we said, this whole jab, 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 right hook, or like adding value before you go in for an ask, just like you would in person. Being persistent. Don't assume the worst. Don't assume, oh man, this person hates me, or I get it. It's like awkward to reach out to someone, especially if it's not something you do on a regular basis, like Brad and I. Yeah. It could be a little bit awkward or intimidating or whatever, but just assume the best. And if we don't answer or we don't get back to you, follow up with us. Like, we want to help you out as much as we can, as long as you are doing the things that we talked about today.
Awesome. All right. So I know you could talk about this all day. I know I could talk about it all day. I also know we both have jobs that we have to do today at some point. So anyway, we will, wrap up here, but be sure to leave a comment. Reach us on LinkedIn. Everything's in the video description. If you need to reach out to us, we do want you to reach out to us. And we definitely appreciate you guys watching the video and staying in touch with our content. And yeah, so we'll wrap up here, but yeah, make sure you check out, the other videos on Jordan's channel and my channel as well. Because there really is great content out there. We're not trying to sell you on something. And we really are just giving honest, transparent, what I consider to be really good advice. Yeah, I agree with the same. I mean, I think both of our goals, to wrap it up, it's exactly what we're doing. I mean, Brad said it today, and we're not trying to like bring attention to it, but it's like, taking time out of our day today just to talk about something. Neither one of us are being paid for this that I know of, but we're not being paid for it. It's like on our own dime, right? Like, we're waking up talking about this. We got legit jobs we're going to right after this. We're honestly just trying to give feedback on things we've learned. So definitely check it out. I mean, that's where we're coming from with it. So keep that in mind when you're looking at all of our stuff. Like, we're really just trying to help you guys all out in the Salesforce community. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for talking to me today, Jordan. And no problem. All right. I'll talk to you soon. All right. We'll talk to you later.